She has already told you she loves you, not once but dozens of times, and there's a strong chance you didn't hear any of it. Not because you weren't paying attention, not because you didn't care, but because the way women communicate love is almost nothing like the way men are taught to look for it. You have been scanning for grand gestures, for direct declarations, for the obvious. And while you were looking there, something quieter and far more significant was happening right in front of you. Here is what most men never realize. A woman in love does not announce it the way you might expect. She reveals it. Slowly. In pieces. Through a series of small, specific moments that are so ordinary-looking that they blend completely into everyday life and disappear without ever being recognized for what they actually were. There is one question I want you to hold in your mind for the entire length of this video. What is she already sharing with you right now that is telling you everything, and you are simply not seeing it? By the time this video ends, you will be able to look back at recent moments with a specific woman and understand, perhaps for the first time, exactly what she was telling you. Not what she said, what she meant. The problem isn't that you've been inattentive. The problem is that no one ever showed you what female love actually looks like when it's real. From a very early age, men are handed a particular picture of how love is supposed to arrive. It is supposed to be visible, announced, romantic in an obvious way. A confession, a declaration, a moment with clear edges and unmistakable meaning. And so, when love actually appears, which it does in a much quieter and more layered form, it does not match the picture. So you do not recognize it. Women are socialized to express emotional depth indirectly. Not as a form of manipulation and not as a test, but because for women, love lives in access. It lives in what she allows, what she shows, what she gives you entry to that she does not give anyone else. When a woman loves a man deeply, she does not typically walk up to him and announce it in those exact words. She begins, gradually and often unconsciously, handing him pieces of herself that she has spent years protecting from everyone else. The tragedy is not that she isn't showing him. She is. The tragedy is that without the right frame, he cannot see the language she is using. That is what this video gives you. The frame. So if there is a woman in your life right now, someone you wonder about, someone whose feelings you are trying to read, stay with me. Because what comes next is going to change the way you see everything that has already happened between you. Think about the last time she just sat with you. Not talking. Not scrolling. Just present. That wasn't nothing. That was everything. Silence is one of the most misunderstood signals in any relationship. Men often interpret quiet as disinterest or distance. If she's not filling the space, something must be wrong. But this reading is almost exactly backwards when it comes to a woman who is falling in love. Women are deeply verbal creatures. They process emotion through language, through conversation, through the act of being heard. Which means silence, genuine, comfortable, unperformed silence, requires a specific kind of trust that takes a long time to build with another person. When a woman is around someone she feels uncertain about or merely attracted to at a surface level, she is almost always managing that space. She is performing slightly, presenting, filling the silence with conversation because the quiet feels exposing. When she stops doing that around you, when she can simply sit beside you without anxiety, without filling every pause, without monitoring how she is coming across, something significant has shifted inside her. This is what attachment researchers describe as a secure base response. The nervous system has essentially decided that this person is safe. Not just physically, emotionally. And for a woman, that verdict does not come easily or quickly. You will notice it in specific ways. She sits near you without needing a reason to be near you. She reads while you work. She watches something in the same room without narrating it to you constantly. She falls asleep beside you without ceremony. These are not signs of boredom. These are signs of a woman who has let her guard completely down, which is something she does for almost no one. Of course, context matters. A naturally introverted woman may be quiet around many people. What you are looking for is the change. Was she more animated, more verbal, more performed in earlier interactions with you? And has that slowly softened into something easier? That softening is the signal. Most men, when they notice a woman getting quieter, begin to worry. They try to generate conversation. They mistake the relaxation for rejection. The quieter she gets in this specific way, the more you can be certain she feels safe. And feeling safe with you is the foundation everything else is built on. But silence is a passive signal, something she has stopped doing. The next signal is something she actively does, something she opens deliberately, and it is far more specific. She stopped trying to impress you. And somehow that's the most impressive thing she's ever done. In the early stages of any attraction between two people, there is a performance layer. This is not dishonesty. It is biology. Women, when drawn to someone new, instinctively present an elevated version of themselves, curated, composed, considered. She thinks about what she wears before she sees you. She considers how she frames stories about herself. She shows you her good days because she is not yet certain her bad ones are safe to bring. This performance layer is actually a sign of interest in its early form. But what happens when it begins to drop is a sign of something much deeper. When a woman loves you, genuinely, deeply, she begins allowing you to see the unedited version of her daily life. She lets you see her without the version of herself she would normally prepare for public. No makeup, comfortable clothes, the kind of day where nothing went well and she doesn't try to spin it into a story. She shows you the mess in her apartment she hasn't gotten around to cleaning. She tells you she had a bad week without packaging it in a way that makes her seem more together than she feels. This is an enormous act of courage, because underneath it is a bet, a quiet, unspoken wager that the real her is enough, that you will not value her less when she stops performing, that what you saw in the curated version will still be there when the curation disappears. Psychologists describe this as identity exposure, the gradual decision to allow one's authentic self to be visible to another person. Most people keep this exposure tightly controlled with almost everyone in their lives, including people they have known for decades. It is reserved for the relationships that feel truly safe. When a woman begins letting you into the ordinary, unglamorous texture of her actual life, not her highlight reel, but her Tuesday afternoon, she is not taking you for granted. She is doing the opposite. She is trusting you with something more valuable than the polished version. She is trusting you with her. And most men miss this completely. They notice she seems more casual now, less dressed up, less on. And they occasionally, quietly wonder if she is losing interest. The reverse is almost always true. She is done performing because she is done auditioning. You already have the role. She didn't have to tell you that. She chose to. And that choice means more than she probably said out loud. Every woman carries an interior archive. It is filled with things that have never been said aloud, or things said only once, to someone who may no longer be in her life. Formative memories, the stories behind her fears, the embarrassing chapter from her 20s she still thinks about sometimes, the thing her father said when she was 12 that she never fully got past, the version of herself she used to be that she's not sure she's proud of. These stories are not shared at dinner parties. They are not posted anywhere. They are held privately, sometimes for decades, and released, if they are released at all, only to the people who have earned a specific kind of trust. When a woman begins sharing these stories with you, something important is happening beneath the surface. She is not simply making conversation. She is choosing you as the person who gets to know the real shape of who she is. Not the resume version. Not the social version. The actual her. The one that was formed in the years before she learned to present herself smoothly. Pay attention to the texture of how she shares these things with you. There is a particular quality to this kind of disclosure that distinguishes it from ordinary conversation. She may pause before beginning the story. She may tell you she has never really talked about this. There may be a quiet vulnerability in the way she says something that lands differently from her usual voice. Softer, perhaps, or more careful, or slightly uncertain how you will receive it. That quality is what you are listening for. Now you might think, maybe she tells everyone these stories. Some people are simply very open. And you are right to consider that. But here is what separates general openness from genuine disclosure. A woman who freely shares personal stories for social effect will do so with energy, with a kind of performance around the telling. A woman who is genuinely giving you something private will tell the story more slowly. There is less performance and more exposure in it. Before we move to the next signal, there is one additional layer to this that most explanations completely skip over. It is not just that she is sharing these stories with you. It is that she is sharing them for the first time out loud. There are experiences people carry silently for years, not because they decided to keep them secret, but simply because no one ever felt safe enough to tell. When you become that person, the one who finally feels safe enough, you are occupying a position in her interior world that almost no one else has ever reached. Most men respond to this kind of disclosure by immediately sharing something equivalent from their own past, as a form of reciprocity. And sometimes that is exactly right. But sometimes the most powerful response is simply to stay present with what she just handed you. To receive it. She will remember that. She mentioned a trip she wants to take, and she didn't say I. She said we. Did you catch that? There is a particular moment in a woman's internal experience of falling in love, when the future stops being something she pictures alone. It happens quietly, often before she has said anything about it. She begins constructing a mental image of the future that includes this person, not as a hypothetical, not as a maybe someday, but as a natural and assumed part of what is coming. And this internal shift eventually finds its way into language. Small language. Easy to miss. She says we should go there sometime about a restaurant she passed. She mentions a friend she wants you to meet, and the way she says it makes clear she has already thought about when and how that introduction might happen. She tells you about a trip she is planning, and at some point, without announcement, the person she is planning it with in her mind is you. She adjusts her timing on a decision, a move, a job, a commitment, without explaining why, but the adjustment makes sense if you are factoring someone in. None of these things are declarations. They are not meant to be read as signals. That is precisely what makes them so accurate. A woman performing interest in a man can manufacture grand gestures. She cannot easily manufacture the unconscious drift of future tense language toward we. You might be thinking, couldn't she just mean that casually? And yes, occasionally, we should go is simply a social pleasantry. But here is the distinction. A woman who means it casually says it once and moves on. A woman who is placing you inside her future will return to the thread. She will remember that she mentioned it. She will come back to it later. The continuity is the signal. Remember what I told you at the start, that there was something she is already sharing with you that most men walk right past. We are getting close to the most important one now. But before we reach it, there is a signal happening in her present emotional state. Not her past, not her future, that almost no one ever reads correctly. When she asks if you're okay, and you're clearly fine, she's not asking about you. She's asking about the two of you. Love, when it deepens past a certain point, creates a very specific kind of vulnerability in a woman. She becomes privately terrified of losing the person she loves. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way that always announces itself. But in the small, quiet ways her behavior shifts when something feels uncertain between you. Even slightly. This is what makes this signal so commonly misread. Because the behaviors that emerge from this fear can look, on the surface, like insecurity or even neediness. She checks in more than usual. She sends a message when you have been quiet for a day. She asks, "Are we okay?" in a moment where nothing seems obviously wrong. She becomes slightly more reactive if you seem distant or preoccupied in a way that is different from your normal. These behaviors are not evidence that she is unstable. They are evidence that you have become something she cannot afford to lose. There is a profound difference between those two readings, and most men choose the wrong one. Psychologists use the term attachment anxiety to describe the heightened alertness that develops when we have formed a deep emotional bond with someone and become aware of how much that bond matters. It is not a character flaw. It is the natural consequence of loving someone enough that their presence in your life has become genuinely significant. When you understand this, her checking in changes meaning entirely. She is not monitoring you. She is protecting something. And what she is protecting is the version of her life that includes you in it. The most common mistake men make with this signal is to pull back. The distance feels like pressure, so they create space. And the space, to her, reads as confirmation of the fear. It is a cycle that ends relationships that never needed to end. What she is actually sharing with you in these moments is her fear. And sharing a fear with someone is one of the most intimate things a human being can do. There is one signal left. I have saved it for last deliberately. Because it is the one most men not only miss, but actively misinterpret when they do notice it. And once you understand what it actually means, you will never look at it the same way again. She introduced you to the people she never introduces anyone to. She did it quietly, maybe even casually. But nothing about that decision was casual. A woman builds her inner world with great care and greater protection. Her closest friends, the ones who know the real version of her, are not accessible to most people. Her family, particularly the members whose opinions she trusts and values, are kept at a careful distance from anyone she is not certain about. The people who shaped her, who know her oldest stories, who would tell her the truth even when she doesn't want to hear it. Access to this group is one of the most protected things she has. When she brings you into this circle, it looks easy from the outside. A casual dinner, an introduction at a gathering, a brief meeting that seems unremarkable. But the decision that preceded it, that happened entirely inside her, probably over weeks or months, was anything but simple, because introducing you to these people means something to her. It means she is staking her emotional credibility on you. These are people whose opinions matter to her. If this goes wrong, if you turn out to be someone she has to explain away or apologize for later, the cost falls on her, in the currency of trust and social reputation inside the relationships that matter most to her. She does not risk that for someone she is uncertain about. What you should also watch for is what happens before the introduction and during it. A woman who is bringing someone she truly loves into her inner circle will have already talked about him to these people before the meeting happens. Her friends will know more about you than you realize. They will have been prepared. And when the introduction happens, she will watch, quietly, from across the room, or from the corner of her eye to see how you land with them. That watching is not evaluation. It is hope. She is hoping, quietly and intensely, that the person she loves and the people who know her best will recognize each other. That hope, the vulnerability of it, the stakes behind it, is one of the clearest things she will ever show you about how much she feels. And this is exactly where most men completely miss the significance of the moment. She kept it low-key. She didn't say, "I want you to meet the most important people in my life." She made it sound simple. So you treated it as simple. And you moved on without understanding what you had just been given. Now you know what she has been sharing with you all along. Now you can see it. Everything this video has covered comes down to one principle. A woman in love does not hand you a declaration. She hands you access. And access, to her silence, to her unguarded self, to her private history, to her imagined future, to her fears, and finally to the people who hold her interior world together, is the most honest and complete form of love she has to give. The grand gesture is easy to see. Anyone can see it. What she is sharing with you is harder to see. It requires you to be paying a different kind of attention, not to the loudest thing in the room, but to the quietest. You now have that attention. You have the frame. And if you use it, you will find that a number of conversations and moments you previously thought were unremarkable begin to read very differently. She was telling you. She has been telling you. You simply needed to know how to listen. You do not need to overanalyze every interaction now. You do not need to catalog her behavior or run every conversation through a checklist. What changes is simply your awareness, the quiet background sense that what is ordinary can also be significant, and that the most meaningful things between two people are often the ones that arrive without announcement. Which one of these signals has a woman already shown you? One you now realize you almost missed? Tell me in the comments. I read them. If this gave you a different way of seeing, subscribe. Because on this channel, we do not deal in surface-level advice. We go into the real psychology, the kind that actually explains what is happening between you and the people in your life. In the next video, I'm going to show you the other side of this, the quiet signals a woman sends when she is beginning to pull away emotionally, before she ever says a single word. If you're in a relationship right now, you'll want to see that one before it's too late.